Welcome, everybody. My name is Jill Jonathan, and I'm here with Red Wine and Blue. And just to let you know a little bit about us, we are a community of women who use digital media and friend-to-friend organizing to change the world one suburb at a time. So I will be joined with Joe, as in JoJo from Jurors, and then we have a very, very special guest, Jess Piper.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jess Piper.
Hi, Jess. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It's so good to see so many people and speak about a really important topic.
Oh, yes, definitely. And Jess, I just want to say you have a huge following here at Red, Wine, and Blue. I'm getting messages from staff that's like, oh my gosh, I love her. I can't wait for this conversation. And I think for me, one of the things I love most about you, and I listen to your podcast, Dirt Road Democrat, is that you just say it how it is. Like, I feel like you're just very no nonsense. This is what's going on, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And this is what it is. Do you feel like that's your style?
Yeah, that's the Midwestern person in me. And also just being a teacher and just getting to the heart of a message. And I don't, believe in a lot of fluff, just saying what needs to be said.
Yeah. Can you just tell us a little bit about, your background? Because I think a lot of people, you are semi new to my, sphere. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background in education and running for office.
Sure. Well, I was an English teacher for 16 years. The last 6 years, I was teaching American Lit, and I was studying the history of slavery, and I was putting that inside of my curriculum. And then I started traveling the country and teaching other teachers to do it, and it was the best job I'd ever had. I absolutely loved it. And then we started getting the little inclinations of CRT, and that sort of thing coming down. So that was sort of sending my spidey senses up. And then in 2020, I went to vote, and I didn't have a Democrat on my ballot. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Everyone from my sheriff to Josh Hawley is a Republican, and I'd had enough. So I decided to, if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I did. And long story short, I lost, but I'm in a very rural red area. My town is 480 people. We haven't elected a Democrat in 30 years, and we have never elected a woman. So it was important that I do it. And it was also important that when I lost, which was pretty inevitable, that I don't walk away, that I keep going and keep fighting.
Oh my God, I love that. Right, Jill? That is such an important and powerful message for everybody listening, because you put yourself out there, and and you said yourself you didn't walk away after that. I think that's incredible. That's a really strong message to everybody that is listening.
Yeah, and I think, Jess, and I've heard you talk before, and I've heard other candidates talk who didn't win. Even though you didn't win, progress was made. So it sounds like you did move the needle a little bit. So before we kind of go into parental rights and, the topic that we're really going to hone in on today, I just love some of the stories you tell about canvassing and talking to people one on one, and just starting out with questions that's like, well, don't you want your kids to have good schools? And so it's like you can start from something that we all agree on and then go from there. So can you just explain to us like how some of those conversations went for you?
Yeah, so I knocked thousands of doors. I made thousands of calls, and nobody has been out here, in decades. They give you something called VAN, which is Voter Access Network. It was all wrong because nobody had run as a Democrat in a very long time. Nobody had won in 30 years. And it's like I said, I live in rural Missouri, so it's very common for people to say, the Democrats, just left rural parts of America. And that's true, but I'll also say that the Republicans did too. Nobody knocks on my door. Nobody calls me. Nobody asks for my opinion. Nobody gives a crap what I want, or what my family wants, or what my community needs. Everybody has deserted rural parts of America. So this is a great opportunity for Democrats to say, you know what, we're here. And when I knocked on doors, it had been so long since anybody had talked to these folks. I mean, I would knock on a door and talk about the schools, and they would talk about Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi. And so it's a lot of education saying, well, Biden and Pelosi really don't have anything to do with your roads or the fact that the hospital closed. That's all local government. So it's starting new, it's starting fresh. but it's worth it. 1 in 4 people voted for me. I got 25%. That sounds awful, but 1 in 4. Every time I go to Hy-Vee and Walmart, I'm like, okay, 1 in 4 people voted for a woman who said the word abortion, who said that people deserve health care. I'm a progressive, and they voted for me. So it's 1 out of 4 that time. Maybe it's 1 out of 3, and then 1 out of 2, and then we win. And that's how we move the needle.
That's incredible. I love it. I'm like so inspired right now. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly true. And I know a school board member that's not part of my school district, but the district next door, and was an incredible candidate and didn't win the first time. And he decided to run again and he won. And now he's on the board. And I'm just like, I think I would hope those people want candidates and people serving them that actually care about them. So I think don't give up at first. You just keep getting your message out, keep making those connections.
And if I could say one thing to the people that are listening, because it's not fun to lose. I mean, I'm a very competitive person and it sucks to lose. But I thought of myself as this. I was an organizer. I was a candidate, but I was also an organizer, and I was putting these things together on the ground. So if every single one of you think of yourself like that, you're an organizer. You can do this. Even if you lose, you still made progress. So I would encourage anyone listening who's thinking of running, please run.
It's incredible. The thing is, what you said about these people, nobody knocking on their doors for years. I mean, these are conversations that they weren't having with anyone. So we always talk about this. I sound like a broken record, but at the end of the day, we have a lot more in common than we think we do. We have a lot of things that we align on, more things than we actually think we do on the surface. And when you have those conversations with people, like you said, this is kind of common sense stuff. 1 in 4 people are like, you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense to me. That resonates with me. I want safe schools for my kids. I want something done about education. I want to know why my hospital closed. It's important to have the conversations because, like you said, the Republicans have abandoned the citizens too. And,
Right.
yeah, and I think that is so important. I'm just grateful for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then, let's get into, I always like to say messaging because I think Democrats have a messaging problem and I think Republicans are really good at it. So right now, Republicans are talking about parental rights. Well, I'm a parent of 2 school-age kids and yeah, I want some rights. So on the surface, that might sound good, but then when you dig a little deeper, it's like, what do these parental rights actually mean? So Jess, I would just love for you to dig into this and just share a little bit of your thoughts of what this is.
When we think about GOP messaging, you have to remember that up is down, down is up. What they say is not what they mean. So you know this because you can think of right to work legislation. That means the right to work for less. When you think of school choice, it means that schools get to choose their students. When you think of parental rights, it means taking the rights away of children and giving them to whom? Which parents? Who gets to control this? So the narrative is completely opposite of what they're saying.
Right. It's this boogeyman kind of this phantom issue, right? So they can work people up into a frenzy and scare them with manufactured crises that are actually, like you said, upside down, inside out, topsy turvy. They don't exist. It's not an issue of parental rights. They want the right to parent everyone else's child.
Right. And I mean, we all want to make sure that our kids have everything they need to succeed. But these politicians are exploiting our parental instincts to protect our children. And they're pushing a freaking agenda that's dividing all of us. And the parental rights agenda is extremist. Because when all the parents have the rights, that means kids don't.
Right. Exactly. Sorry, Jill, do you want to say something?
Oh, I was just thinking when you're talking about the kids don't, and I've been to enough school board meetings in my own community where I've talked to some of the high school kids that have been there, and they're like, listen, like when it came to masking, they were like, we don't have a problem wearing a mask. Like, we understand we're protecting ourselves and the people around us. We don't understand why the adults are having this problem. We don't have a problem with learning accurate history. We want it. We want to learn an accurate history. We want to read these books. We want these things. So there's like some confusion of like, I don't understand why there are parents up here speaking out against this. And the kids are like, this is ridiculous. Just kind of what I've seen. I'm sure that's not across the board, but it's like, yeah, let's listen to our kids and let's think about their rights.
It kind of is across the board. I mean, I taught, American Lit, and I was, using American Lit to teach the history of slavery and racism and what was going on in our country. And the reason I did that, one, is because I graduated from Arkansas, a high school in 1993, and I walked out not knowing anything. There were no people of color in my school. I didn't learn anything about racism or slavery or Jim Crow or discrimination. And I went to college and I was like, holy
Mm.
crap. I had no idea. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so, as I, began being a teacher and realizing that there was a hole missing in my American Lit curriculum, that we weren't really giving voice to, people of color. And when we were, sometimes it was inappropriate, the pieces that were picked, and so I started studying with Black scholars across the country, and I learned to do things that I was doing incorrectly. When I was teaching, the history of lynchings, I was showing lynched bodies, and one of my Black teachers took me aside and she said, Jess, that's really traumatic to Black kids and to Black folks to show brutalized bodies. And I was like, holy
Mm.
crap. Like, I didn't know that. They taught me things I didn't know. And I started teaching the kids the things I didn't know. And I'm going to tell you, I'm in a white area, like 96, 97% white. And those are my students, 96, 97% white. I never had a white kid ever say, I'm embarrassed to be white.
Hmm.
They're like, holy crap, Piper, I didn't
Yeah.
know.
I saw this amazing quote today. I believe it was in Vanity Fair. The truth is that when it comes to talking about things like slavery, systemic racism, and the Holocaust, the parents who are against these things simply can't stand the idea that their children are learning that sometimes white people do bad things. And that really resonates with me, especially based on what you just said about, growing up in a white area, and that you were predominantly in a white area teaching. That really something that is at the core of so much of their agenda, right?
Right. It's trying to make white folks feel like they're the ones being
Right.
oppressed by learning history, which is, again, topsy turvy, upside down. Right. But that's how this entire movement is working. Parental rights. There's a parental rights bill going through the Missouri Senate right now, and they literally are allowing people to walk into my daughter's school and observe teachers and observe administrators and observe my kid. And when they push these things, they don't understand how dangerous that is to let anyone into my kid's school. Anyone who has a kid in that school can
Wow.
now walk around the school if this is passed. And that's not
Right.
okay.
That's definitely not, that's not parental rights.
Wow. I mean, that's terrifying, right? For so many
Right.
reasons. I mean, you just think about the safety for one. I mean, we could have a whole episode on that. And then just, as a teacher, like, I can't even imagine the stress and the pressure a teacher could feel when they're just trying to do their job to the best of their ability, where they feel like people are watching them and could critique them or report them at any second. I mean, how does that feel as an educator?
Well, it's really scary. And my whole thing with, a couple of years ago, maybe it was just a year ago, they were trying to pass legislation to put cameras in classrooms to watch teachers. And here's the thing, I don't want anyone to have access to my daughter. I don't want them to see her. And children, by the way, I taught, bigger kids, 16, 17-year-old kids, they make mistakes. They say things that are inappropriate because they're learning. Those things shouldn't be on showcase for every single person to see,
Hmm.
right? We allow a space for kids to make mistakes and learn and grow and extend their thinking. And sometimes the things they say are sexist, sometimes they're inadvertently racist, and they didn't know what they didn't know. And this is where, they learn. And to have that broadcast out for everybody is traumatic for every
Right.
kid.
Plus, they can't feel comfortable or safe. That's what's so important. It's an undercurrent on this entire conversation that the kids should feel safe at school, and a lot of kids would not feel comfortable or safe with knowing that a camera is recording their every misstep, mistake, awkward teenage word, misphrasing, you name it. Like I know if at 15, 16, I would have been back in the corner, like hovering, terrified of what I might do that might embarrass myself further.
Right. And it's we have to remember that, I mean, kids have civil rights
Yeah,
too. When we talk about parental rights, they have the right to be to be people. Their parents don't own them, you know. And the thing with the parental rights movement too is not only do these people want rights over their own kids, they want their rights over all
exactly.
kids, everybody's
Right.
kid. And that's what everyone should be up in arms about, is that they're deciding what your kid
Right.
learns.
Right. It's not about them protecting their child by making sure that their child doesn't have access or isn't exposed to a book. They want to make sure that no child has access to or is exposed to a certain book or curriculum. It's again, it goes back to, it's, if it is a parent's right, it's not a parent's, it's my right over my child. It's not my right over everyone's child.
Right. And I would remind folks too, I taught, you know, literature for 16 years. If a parent was opposed to a book, they got a different book. I never
Right.
force anything on anybody, because all of us are coming from a different background. All of us could be coming from different religions. And if this goes against everything your family believes, then by all means, pick another one in the same genre, or, you know, something that can go along with it. And you can do a completely different study. And as a teacher, I've done that so many times. I can't even count how many times that's happened.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, they want to impose their own narrow point of view on the entire public school system, right? Under the
Exactly.
guise of public good, when it's right.
Right.
So, Jess, have you seen, because I know you've taught for a long time, have you seen a shift since the pandemic and since the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020? I've read a lot and heard a lot of people talk about that. Has where a big shift has come from? Is that something that you've observed yourself?
I walked away from teaching in 2021. So I worked through the pandemic. And I attended a Black Lives Matter rally in our town, which is, like I said, mostly all white. And even Claire McCaskill, our former senator, she retweeted it and she was like, something is going on in Maryville, because there were hundreds of students at the courthouse, you know, who were so upset about what was going on. Yeah, I did see a big shift. I taught a poem by Clint Smith, who I love. About lynching, and I immediately was called into the office for that. My principal, I will have to say, was very supportive of me. It was other administrators who were not. I had talked about teaching a section of Black Lives Matter during my protest lit, because there's a part in my curriculum that's mandated by the school that is called protest lit. And I said, this is a great place, you know, to put Black Lives Matter in. And I had an administrator say, well, I think they're Marxist. And I asked him, you know, what is a Marxist? And he said, well, I couldn't debate you on that. And I was like, no, you can't. You're exactly
Hmm.
right. Because you would lose. But yeah, I did see, you know, a big pushback at that time.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Black Lives Matter content is one of the things that is really triggering for so many of these activists for parental rights, because they're wrapping it up in this CRT curriculum that is again a boogeyman because it's not being taught in elementary school levels. But what it's the perfect tool for scaring white conservative voters with like made up problems, and it mobilizes them against any possible racial awakening. You know what I mean? It's it's these boogeyman words is they drum up, like you said, Marxist or whatever. They use these words to whip people into a frenzy, and they don't bother to explain them, and it really plays upon a lot of white conservative parents darkest fears, but it's not based in reality at all.
Right. And the point with the parental rights movement, it's not even to protect children from anything. It's the institutions behind the movement are the same ones who are refusing to address like the actual dangers to kids, like child marriage, child abuse, gun violence. Like the point of the parental rights movement is denying children information so that they grow up and to be the adults who are actively pushing parental
Right. So
rights.
interesting because I think you bring my attention to so many issues, especially in Missouri, which is a state that I have honestly not given a ton of thought to, other than that I cannot stand Josh Hawley. But you brought my attention to the legislation in Missouri. You can probably enlighten us a little bit with some of our time left about how there was a bill about any age, a child of any age being able to carry a firearm in public without an adult. I mean, maybe like it's beyond the pale. It's crazy.
Yeah. So you have to know about, and I'm laser focused on Missouri legislators because this is what's happening to our state. They're the ones who are oppressing and marginalizing people. But the first thing they did at session this year is to make sure, you may have seen this online, but to make sure that women legislators were covering
Yep.
their arms. That was the first thing we did. And there was literally hours of discussion about freaking cardigans. Okay. So that's the point that we started this session. But
Right there.
St. Louis legislators, yeah. So there's a big thing in Missouri where, we've been under a GOP supermajority for 20 years. So everything you see going on in this state is from the freaking GOP. It has nothing to do with any Democrats because we haven't had any power for 20
Mm.
years. But we do have two states, Kansas City, or cities, Kansas City and St. Louis, who, by the way, have black mayors who are constantly attacked for, the crime in their city. So our St. Louis mayor was like, cool, we can do something about it. How about we make it to where it's not legal for a 12-year-old to carry an AR open carry down the street? And Missouri legislators were like, "Nah, that's too much. It's too far. We can't do that." They're saying what they thought they were saying is that they weren't going to impact, kids who go hunting. Well, I have guns. I have guns from the Eisenhower, administration in my house because Democrats never took them away. My kids hunt, but they don't need to be walking down a sidewalk with a rifle on their back. They head out to the back. They head out to the cornfield. That's where the kids hunt. They're not hunting on the streets of St. Louis. But that was a step too far for the GOP to say that children shouldn't carry
I mean,
guns.
all of this, right, and juxtaposed with our entire conversation about them wanting to protect kids, and yet they're more concerned about what you just said, really letting a 12-year-old carry an AR-15 down the streets. Like, it's so contradictory and hypocritical. It really does boggle the mind. I mean, I don't even have the words for it.
I
And the
know.
bear arms,
It makes me
yeah, the bear
crazy.
arms thing, that was something that all of us, I think Jill can definitely comment on this. Like, I mean, come on, this is the year 2023, and really they're spending their time, resources, and tax dollars on debating whether or not a cardigan classifies and as correct covering, or if they can like, really are elbows and shoulders, that risque that they can't legislate. I just don't even. It's like, what is happening?
I know, exactly. And the same people who will say that children are too young to read whatever book, or too young to read about, Martin Luther King
Right.
Jr., are old enough to deliver a pregnancy of a rape. Like, they're saying that, and old enough to carry a gun, but they are too young to learn about Malcolm X.
Exactly. I mean, we talk about that all the time, and it's like we have to push back on all of it, because we have to keep calling them out, and we have to do what you're doing, which is standing up in a sea of red, and using your voice, and your power to make change. I just wanted to ask real quick before, I don't Jill's probably going to wrap up. I know I've been like talking too much, but I'm just so curious. I don't think you mentioned, how did you end up being a Democrat? Because I don't know, did you mention it and I missed, getting swept up in how brilliant you are?
No, no, I was actually born and raised a Southern Baptist. I was a conservative. The last Republican president I voted for was George W. Bush, the younger one. I went to, honestly, I went to school and I read books. My entire religion fell apart, by the way, whenever I was assigned to read Gilgamesh, because in my fundamentalist religion, I had been told all my life that the Bible was the oldest book that was ever written. And as a young person sitting on my couch reading Gilgamesh, everything fell apart because I was like, oh my God, that's not true. What else isn't true? And so I started leaning left, and then, the rest is history. I ended up being super progressive.
How does that work with the rest of your family?
Well, I'm the black sheep of the family. My immediate family, all of my now this is good news, folks. I had 5 kids, and every one of them is a raging liberal. So you are welcome. You are welcome. But the rest of my family, it's been pretty traumatic. I don't get to visit with my mom like I should because I can't talk about politics. I haven't been invited back to my home since 2016 because I voted for Hillary Clinton. So I'm like a lot of people in America. The Trump presidency absolutely broke my family.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I would also say that, 2016, like with red, wine, and blue, that's where we've seen, from what I've noticed to all the women I talked to, is there have been like two shifts. And the first was 2016. And that's what happened for me, where I was like, oh my gosh, what, how did this happen? I have to do something. And then the second shift, that kind of like second wave of women are like, wait, what can I do? Was the overturning of Roe v. Wade. That's my
Yeah.
observation, just those two big things waking people up. And now I feel like I want people to wake up to what's going on here at the schools, because on the surface, like I was saying before, like when you hear parental rights, you're like, well, that sounds good. Or you hear school choice. I just would love to hear. I know you have a lot of thoughts on that. Um, School choice, you're like, well, that sounds like a good idea. So I feel like there's a
Let's
lot of these things. If you don't dig further or have the conversations about them, you might think, oh, well, that sounds like a good idea. But no, pay attention. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Jess, on school choice.
You can school choice is outrageous. You can give me as many vouchers as you want. You can give me 10, you can give me 20. It absolutely doesn't matter because my child doesn't have a choice because I live in a tiny rural place and she has no access to any choice school. If I wanted to, if they gave me one, I could send her to St. Joe, which is 60 miles one way for her to use that voucher. And that would be me providing the transportation, which absolutely could not happen. So one, rural folks need to figure out they don't mean you when they say choice. They also don't mean your kid that has a 504 or an IEP or any sort of social emotional learning or learning disability, because they're not going to take your kid. And if you are, if you are gay, if your child is gay, they can keep your child from coming to that school. And they're very specific about it. You can go to these schools and look, Ames Christian School in Ames, Iowa, right on their front page. It says, we do not accept kids who need any sort of schooling outside of the mainstream
Ooh,
classroom. That means any kid who has anything, extra, any services, they're not going to provide it. But the state of Missouri will provide a state funded voucher. They will take my tax money and send it to somebody who's already sending their kid to a private school and pay for their tuition to a school that my child has no access to. So they are outrageous. Everything is, like I said, turned on
yes.
its head. Most lawmakers who are pushing for these have donors or lobbyists who are lining their pocket or giving them, campaign money to push vouchers. They in Missouri, and here's just a real quick fact: 2/3 of people who get vouchers from the state already have their kids in a private school already. So now we're just paying for their tuition.
Wow. And then there's no oversight, right? So these schools can basically
None.
right, so the curriculum, not to mention that they're non-inclusive, which leads to environments where they just kind of breed more, intolerance, which which is, I guess, the goal. But I mean, it's funny because, like you said, I think it's so important how you keep going back to this, how they flip everything on their head, and every word that they use is designed to, create a narrative that's actually the opposite. It's like double speak. Like, this is not school choice. Like, that Jim Jordan tweeted yesterday, like every child in America should have access to the same education, but on its face, that's what it might look like. But when you just dig the tiniest little bit deeper, and you can see what you're saying, and it's so important that, like, in particular rural folks, but also, people in inner cities, that they understand, that this is just gaslighting, really.
Well, and school vouchers came from Brown v. Board. They came from white flight, from white folks not wanting to send their kids to school with black folks. So they gave them state money to go to, another institution, usually religious. And here's the thing, too: I don't want my kid to go to a religious
Right.
school. That's, lots of people are like, well, there's a Catholic school not very far. I'm not Catholic. I don't want my daughter to go to mass. These are things that are just, they're constantly pushing against the rest of us. Like, have your religion, do your thing. You can have choice. You can send your kid to St. Greg's. That's fantastic. I'm glad that you can do it, but not on my dime.
Right. And they're deciding, they're trying to, in while they're saying that liberals are trying to indoctrinate their children by forcing this content down their throat, what they're trying to do is the exact same thing they're accusing the left of doing. They're trying to control what they have access to, what they don't have access to, the schools they can go to, whether or not they are subjected to religion or not, and taking those rights away from parents. It's exactly the opposite of what they're saying they're doing, or then what they're accusing us of doing at the same time.
And what they always say is that, that we should, your zip code shouldn't matter. And I'm like, hell yeah, You're exactly right. Your zip code should not matter. So fund my local school, because that is the only thing I have access to. In Missouri, we're 49th for educational funding. That means the state sends 32% of school budgets. That means 68% of the rest of the school budget has to come from local property taxes and businesses. Well, I tell you what, I told you I live in a town of 480 people. I bought a farmhouse and 5 acres for $30,000. And that's not crazy. The house across the street for me is for sale for 32. How much am I sending to my school? Do you see what they're doing to people who, and I can't afford a $200,000 house. I can't afford to move to that place, but it shouldn't matter that people will look me in the eye and tell me that they paid more for their house and their child deserves a better
Right.
education. And I can't help but be absolutely blown away by that statement. I don't know how on God's green earth we could ever come to that agreement that because children come from poverty, they don't deserve the same education.
Right. We talk about this a lot, and sorry, Jill, I'm sorry, but like we want to all the children. When you say all the children,
Yeah.
you have to mean all the children, not just your children.
We mean it. Yeah, we mean all the children. And I had this discussion with some family members a couple of days ago, and it was that same thing. I'm like, listen, I care about my kids, but I also care about other people's kids too. So if we know that we need reform in public education, but it needs to be funded. Like, let's not take the funding out of that and start building these privatized religious institutions and that people like, Jess, that you don't even have access to get to. How can that be the answer? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's not the answer. And you'll hear lots of people. I did Joe Walsh's show the other day where he says, well, if things aren't doing well, we can't just keep throwing money at it. We haven't thrown money
So
at it.
true.
We have not.
Yeah.
Right. People will always say, well, it costs $22,000 to educate, a kid in Washington, D.C. I'm like, they're doing it for 7 years. They're literally giving us $7,000. And by the way, when you do that average, what it costs, to educate a kid with an average, a special ed kid, a kid who needs services costs double, triple that. So these places, these private and religious institutions that are saying we can do better with less. Yeah, you can, because you're not accepting anybody who needs special education.
Right.
Of course you can do it for cheaper. And you don't have certified teachers. You're paying people, above minimum wage to stand at the side of the room, and when we talk about this too, religious schools, people always think of, Robin Williams and standing on desk, oh, Captain, my Captain, and leather bound books. When what actually happens is you're in the basement of the First Baptist Church looking at a cinder block wall with a coach on the side who's making $8.50 an hour to make sure that you finish your worksheets.
Getting back to the special education part of that, I was a paraprofessional for autistic preschoolers for almost 7 years, and one of the reasons I unfortunately had to leave a job that was very fulfilling and rewarding personally was because after my separation and now divorce, it didn't pay a livable wage. I was making before taxes $16 an hour, working with nonverbal 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds. And it just don't tell me you're throwing money, like to your point, at the problem when you haven't actually ever tried that. And that's infuriating. Like you got to pay educators a livable wage, or you're going to end up with, like you said, you're going to end up with these coaches in the basements with kids looking at cinder blocks. And then what happens to the autistic 3, 4, and 5-year-olds? Where do they go? Who helps
Yeah,
them?
they're either staying at home or they're in that defunded school that they pulled all the funding from to send money to private schools. I taught for 16 years. I had a master's degree, was traveling the country. I walked out making $41,000 a year, which after my retirement, I brought home $2,400 a month. And that's what I lived on as an educator with a master's and 16 years experience. The people that are walking into my daughter's school right now, we have a revolving door of brand new teachers because they pay them $33,000 a year and they can't live on it because their bring home pay is $1,800 a month. They cannot live on it. And so it's just this constant, and people are like, like we said, don't throw any more money at it. What does that work in anything else? Anything else? If you strip all the money away from the Department of Transportation, does that make roads better? If you pull all the money, all the funding from hospitals, does that make care better? It doesn't work in any other situation. So I'm not exactly sure why they do it here.
Right. Well, because they want to privatize everything.
Yes.
I wonder where that's coming from. Yeah, Jess, oh my gosh. I feel like we could talk to you all afternoon. I was messaging Joe. I was like, we might need a part 2 with her because this is such an important topic. And, before we wrap up, Jess, I would just love to hear like what what are some of your ideas for solutions? And I would tell you, I did listen to your podcast on Joe Walsh, and kudos to you because wow, you handled yourself so well. I was like, that was like a masterclass. So good job.
Thank you. Well, it's pretty easy when I've been studying it for a long time and somebody else is just in it, for privatizing, for making money. And that's the thing. I'm not making any money to do anything. I'm just here because I have skin in the game, because I have a kid who needs an education, and what's happening right now isn't going to help. The first thing you can do is contact state and federal representatives, but especially your state representatives. I downloaded Fast Democracy, and I use that all the time. And every single day I wake up and I write about a bill, and it doesn't take very long. But what I'm trying to do is, in Missouri, 40% of House seats went uncontested. That means that Republicans got a free pass to go and do whatever hate and discontent they want to do down in Jeff City. We handed them the state on a silver platter. And I'm just saying no more. So I'm working with Blue Missouri. And what I'm doing is funding every race. I ran in Missouri and I didn't get funding from the state party because they said, your race doesn't matter. You can't win. Well, by God, how do we win? How in the world do we make any change if we are not going to fund or find candidates in these rural areas? That is the only way to make change. So I've made it my mission. So bluemissouri.org, we are supporting every single candidate, Democratic candidate that is running. And that's what we have to do across the country. You have to have folks run, and you have to let the GOP know they're not safe in those seats. They can't just waltz into your state capitol and do whatever they want to do. You're putting them on notice. We're going to find somebody that's going to run against you. We're going to fund them. And this is going to be a dogfight until we can do something better for our kids.
Incredible.
I know. I'm like, yep, clap to that. Jess?
Yeah, Jess, she said, I just want to add this before we wrap up. There's such a great lesson in this conversation for everybody out there, because you can actually make change. You can be brave, but also, like, you can find, maybe you're not comfortable running for office like Jess, but there are ways that you can get involved, and talking to people, like we always talk about, Red, White, and Blue, is so important. Like, having these conversations and finding the bridges in between us that we may not have known exist or existed. And there's so much a lesson to be taken from your experience and your journey, and as you continue along. Like, that's incredibly important to highlight for everybody listening out there.
Thank you. And I want to remind everybody too, just knocking on doors. I talked to a lot of people that didn't end up voting for me, but they found out I'm not the devil. They found out I don't eat babies, right? They found out that I'm a normal person. So maybe I didn't change their mind this time, but maybe next time. And that's what we all have to be thinking about, that long game. It took the Republicans a long time. It's going to take us a long time, but it's worth it.
That's right. Think about that long game. And like you said, the three of us are all moms, and we've got skin in the game. Yeah. We've got kids in schools, and we want what's best for them as well as other kids. Like, I truly care about other children as well.
Yes. So. A mom in Missouri, a mom in Ohio, and a mom in Jersey. We can all agree.
We care about our kids. We care about our future. So we are going to do what we can. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Joe. And definitely stay in touch and follow us at Red, Wine, and Blue. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all social media. Follow us or go to our website, redwine.blue. We have all kinds of trainings and great information and resources there. And we'll keep you inspired to keep going, and we'll keep you in the know. So thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you, guys. Bye.